Hi, everyone. So, a little bit different of a lecture today on ideas and concepts of organized crime and security. The idea is that we are in a constant state of attacks, insurgencies, but we never really know who from. In the olden days, we could always pick out the mobsters or the attackers from organized crime because they would wear the zoot suits and the hats. They were traditionally a Italian family descendant or something like that we know of, the stereotypical type of people, or from a different family generation, or you would know because of the neighborhood you were in. Today's world's quite different. You don't know who these people are. They're sightless, they're nameless, they're zeros and ones from anywhere. When we look at data and leaking and security, you are a target. Think back to 1983, there was a great movie about war games. It kind of predicted this idea of what it was going to be like when computers ran our world and if they could be controlled, or more importantly, artificial intelligence can control it, which is happening now today with algorithms. We saw in 71 two UC Berkeley students, Stephen Jobs and Wozniak, who were brilliant minds of Apple, created an idea of blue boxes. These were small devices that captured telephone ability so that they could have free phone calls to market their new product of Apple computers, to work this out. And essentially it was organized crime because they were stealing the ability to communicate through the telephone wires and companies without paying for it. And they were profiting on it by selling their computer systems. These cyber intruders started way back in the 70s, if you really want to think about it. They moved quickly through the ranks and ages. In the 90s, we saw two ingenious young men, Kevin Mitchkin and Kevin Paulson. They captured digital equipment companies' computers. They did this, importantly, because of a radio contest. They ended up on the FBI's most wanted list, which was incredible for the time. They commandeered Los Angeles' greater telephone company lines. And to do this, they put an algorithm through to capture to be the winners of a Porsche 944, which was huge back then, a great car, $50,000, which would be $100,000 plus today, if they were the 102nd caller on the radio. By doing this, they were able to capture everything, control all the calls, and create it so that they were 102. Amazing at the time, unheard of feats. But again, essentially, they were organized crime in a different fashion. They were the start of, which gave organized crime the idea to start utilizing this material and training their own people. We saw the Pirate Bay incident. It was source code nabbed by, of all people, people that try to, protect us. Norton antivirus code was stolen. They said that there was over 1.27 gigabytes of hacked material stolen by the pirates. And back then they were asking for a measly $50,000 to give the code back to them and not publish it on the Pirate Bay website. This essentially was the same thing that organized crime is doing today, but they're doing it smartly with individuals and banks and different places, and they're holding all this information. They are freezing your computers today. They'll go in, screens will pop up and say, if you want your computer back and all your data, give us this money, give us your credit card, then they have you. So this is an old trick seen new. We are under attack every day. It's just the sustainability of organized crime to create new methodologies to attack us to get our dollars for free. Is this ethical in cases? I always ask that question because every time you have a yin, you have to have the yang, the positive, the negative, the up, the down. Anonymous has always been called the ethical hacking. We have a lot of classes for ethical hacking. The question to me is there any ethical hacking ever? Hacking itself is unethical, so how can it be ethical? Just because it's used for prosperous ways for the positive, the greater good, does not mean it's ethical, but it can be presumed that because of the outcomes. Look at how Anonymous took hold of MasterCard, why they were supporting Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, and they saw this as a way for them to prosper and hidden through church and political leaders' support of him. Julia Assange brings up a question of whether or not WikiLeaks itself is an ethical manner. Back to our communications idea, to where ethical reporting and editorial reporting stance should be a lot of information. So what if the information is illegally captured? We can say the same thing with two great reporters that worked for the Washington Post that brought a presidency down. Nixon, if you remember, and Watergate. What if that information wasn't leaked to them? What if they did not see this? If Woodford and Brown didn't have this possibility to grab that information, trail that stuff, and report it to the community, the global population, this would continue. Whitewater was another question, in fact, as well, with another presidency. These are all leaked information. Essentially the same as anonymous, but in a paper format. Sorry, gang. When Chelsea Bradley Manning leaked information, it was a matter of state secrecy, yes. Did the public have a greater right to know? Should we know this information? Should there be an ethical and editorial value allowed? Does law prohibit all this? Well, still questions engaged now, and we'll talk more about Edward Snowden in a minute. But when does it become journalistic privilege of communication of global information and, in essence, an attack, an intrusion on the public's right to know, and on personal data, on intrusion into security issues? These are all gray areas still. We talk about the Arab Spring a lot and hacktivist ideas in this. But again, back to that idea of anonymous and the actions of these positive things that are still legal, unethical, but they gain ground. As an example, Operation Darknet. It targeted child pornographers. It attempted to block the sites where they were using and communicating illegal images that hurt children and other people. And eventually, they released the names of 1,500 users on these sites. As credible as it was, what if the one person's being attacked? What if it's an illegal Facebook page or a illegal connection by someone who's stolen their ID? How does this happen? We've seen this recently in the Washington Quarter area, to where there was a hacking and releasing of names of thousands of individuals who are said to be cheating on their spouses. Entire neighborhoods in Virginia were up overthrown with divorces, women throwing their husbands out when this was leaked. What if this information was essentially harmless? That someone went on, created a pile just to look because their friends were talking about it. Is it foolish? Yes. But what if it was someone just trying to get back at someone? Maybe it was one of these sites that we'll see today that are out there where youth are utilizing the web to post images of their exes when they break up in teenage stances. There's a couple different sites, and I'll talk about them in another lecture about how the youth are illegally breaking laws and doing criminal activities in their own essence as an organized crime. And we'll talk about pleaserobme.com, which is a terrible site to where anyone who's on Facebook algorithms grab your information and put it out there when you're on vacation at Disney World and let robbers know, hey, they're away from their home, go get them. Go take them. Steal that information. There's a lot of places out there where young people are doing this and essentially creating the same thing of organized crime or organized attacks on individuals or multiple members of a community. They become a whole new wave. It's interesting because there's gray area for all these areas. They also attacked the NSA and tried to create denial of service attacks on the hacktivists. You know, the NSA's thought were, well, we'll counter, be unethical ourselves, and try to stop you from using your own freedom of information. They in turn went after things like Sony's PlayStations to attack them when Sony was helping out what they consider to be immoral and unethical actions, but they alone created their own unethical actions and a breach in security, illegal activities. It's a very large circle that we're looking at and very broad. When is anonymous organized crime? Does it come down to the factor of people like Albert Gonzalez, who created Shadow Crow, where he's creating criminal tutorials? It's showing you how to be a cryptologist, how to card clone, credit cards, ATMs. It was thought that over 180 million credit cards were captured by his group, the Shadow Crew. Same with ATM cards and cloned. How many millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars of theft that created, who knows? They also struck global corporations through CrowdStrike. They look for intelligence to sell information and intellectual property, like we were talking about prior. This new understanding source code and information is a big business in organized crime. This will not stop. We need to look at when are the laws going to change to help NSA and other agencies look at these people and follow them and trace them themselves to meet their own demands of what they are doing. If criminals can get away with the activity and courts stop us from allowing to do the same thing, where does the line draw for our safety and protection? These are things the law is going to have to look at. Think about the terrorist actions. There's a thing called Encyclopedia of Jihad. It has actions online and talking about how to kill, create explosive devices, manufacturing of detonators, and assassination with mines. These are all pieces of information that should not be readily available, in my opinion. Then it goes back to ideas. You say, wow, well, this goes back to the idea of the Nazis burning books for what they thought the collective should not be able to read. We still see that in public schools today with literature. Yes, there is some need in ways for this, but when it specifically explains how to, in the sole purpose of creating mass destruction, should the government be able to limit or block this? Should they, if you go to this site, be able to track you or track those creating this information? These are all legal grounds and gray areas still to today that is stopping law enforcement from arresting individuals they know are plotting mass destruction. We've seen this in the 9/11 attacks, where the cell phones were captured by a foreign entity. The information was given to the CIA, and because of information hoarding, the CIA did not apparently give the information to the FBI, who was watching these individuals ready to take flight. They all said goodbye on cell phones to their family and loved ones, and once that information was captured, we could have stopped that terrorist action, but because of our laws and information hoarding, we did not. So the ethics of this is still in question. The security of your personal information, if we're allowed to track that one cell phone call, what's stopping them from tracking yours and capturing every single word you said, hoping to find one word that maybe is out of context? Maybe I say a sentence like, I'm going to go kill, and it breaks up a turkey for dinner tonight while I'm hunting. Or I hope to get, whatever. These things can break up and change your whole life. So it's the ethical question of when is it allowed, when is it not allowed, how much is it allowed, when is it a security breach? These are all questions we have to ask ourselves, and how much we'll allow. Youssef was one of the ones that could have been stopped with the World Trade Center bombings. He utilized this information to create and design a bombing. We've seen this slightly later too, and more recently, unfortunately, and we're still dealing with the Boston Marathon. The two brothers talked readily about this. They researched from an Al-Qaeda site about their pressure cooker bombs that they created. They actually learned it from a site called Make a Bomb in Your Kitchen of Your Mom. This should be a red flag to us. When is the states going to say, this is too much or this is not enough, we can follow you, we can't follow you? These are all legal precedents that are still being created. Organized crime is fostering off of this inactivity of our legislature. It is also overwhelmingly learning how to create its own future of criminal adventures. The National Security Agency, just to bring it back and surround us, looked at Edward Snowden. They're talking about how their plan of global surveillance and apparatuses, global technical surveillance, the keystroke idea, was able to track emails, phone messages, chat messages, and SMN texts, looking for key situations on algorithms that would set off an alarm to tell us if someone's a possibility of being a terrorist. Is this ethical? No. Is this something new? No, the FBI did it with cameras and recordings on organized crime. It's just a sustainability to where we're trying to fight crime, to where they are trying to get around the laws and ethics. The problem today is there's no laws. It's all still a gray area to what they can capture and what they can get away with. The interesting facts are, as things you will be researching and looking at, is drawing conclusions from what's out there. And now, as graduate students and students yourselves, just being able to make conclusive draws through your research and literature and say confidently in support of, here's the opinion I believe is the strength of this matter. We all have a connection. We all have a positive or negative to these thoughts. Nothing is right or wrong, unfortunately. But we all have to think for ourselves and educate ourselves through a lot of these lectures and ideas and pieces that are out there. We have to ask, what is legal and what is ethical invasion? We have to ask ourselves, what point is legally acceptable in our minds, our community, our culture? And this changes from area to area. If you're living in New York City, you might be a lot more available to openness about having your telephones constantly tapped, your cell phones tapped, allowing this information to be gathered to protect you. We also have to say the difference if you're Macon, Georgia. Say, why would you want to tap Dr. Spangler's phone? What could you possibly learn from him? That he's reading too many books on law cases, that he's too interested in odd topics and reading things like the Count of Monte Cristo for the third time. Who knows? But the interest is, how acceptable will this be for each culture? When do we draw a universal global line? How will these laws fluctuate and change if we do create this? Will there be a law body have to be overseeing everything? Will the ethics standards change because of the fact that we are more accepting ourselves? And will the whistleblowers laws actually protect whistleblowers? Will Snowden, instead of escaping and fleeing from our country, say, hey, I'm protected. I think this was wrong. These are the questions you can start asking, which make great papers. And we look at the literature and we can see the gray holes, or the gaps, as we like to say, scholarly, in the literature to talk about and assess and ask our legal frames, our minds, our governments, what do we do next? I hope this opens your minds up a little bit more, and I'm looking forward to your next series of work. Have a great day, everyone.